Welcome to Third Space Live. I'm Jody Peel, Executive Director of Third Space Life Charity here in Kelowna, British Columbia. This show offers ideas, conversations, and stories to build mental health and a mentally healthy community. Today's April 21st, 2020, and this is show number 8. You can learn all about our charity, our programs and services, and sign up for our newsletter at thirdspacecanada.org. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or you can view recordings of all these shows on our YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the culture of hurry and how we can choose to respond to that. I'd like to introduce you to our guest, Ed Weiss. Ed is a therapist, and he also happens to be the director of our charity's student care program. That program in the last year or so has offered university students at University of British Columbia, Okanagan campus, over 2,000 free counseling visits to support those students. And by fall, the team will be doubling and opening that program up to more post-secondary students in our community. Ed is, he's been practicing in the area of supporting youth and young adults for over 35 years. He founded Reach Out Ministries, which is a nonprofit that provides counseling and care to young people and young adults, helping them navigate through adolescence and the extended adolescent journey, which is now what kids are living through. Ed's community contributions are countless, but they include most recently his partnership in the establishment of The House here in Kelowna. He's also a founding director of Third Space. Ed's also just an amazing guy, and he's very soulful, and I haven't met anyone who has met him and hasn't been drawn to him. So it's with pleasure and deep humility that I invite him to join this conversation today to talk to us about the culture of hurry.
There good. Good. Sorry about that.
How are you today?
I'm good. I'm really good. Just getting my notes together. Yeah, I'm awesome.
Yeah, I like your earbuds. Those are cool.
Oh, thank you.
You're
yeah.
nose.
Right on. I decided to sit outside while we do this because I can.
Yeah, why not? It's a beautiful day. Okay, Ed, we're going to talk about the culture of hurry today. Now, when I was telling people about this, everybody's super excited because it's something we all know exists, and none of us are too happy about it, yet we're all feeling maybe that we're trapped in it. So maybe you can walk us through what it is and what choices we have about it.
Yeah, I thought about this. I've had the privilege of doing a couple of academic sabbaticals in my life, and a sabbatical of that kind is not no vacation. It's not time off. Rather, it is time to give intentional and intense focus to a very specific area of study or a very specific area of growth, in your life. And I don't want to. I'll say this carefully because far too many have died because of COVID-19. But in some ways, COVID-19 has given the human race a sabbatical, an opportunity, because normal has ended. And without normal distractions, we can either find new distractions, or we can figure out how to slow down and catch up with our breath and catch up with our souls. And this is a good time to have the conversation. Hurry is, I think, for all of us, a nemesis. And maybe I'm going to use two words interchangeably: distraction and hurry, because one is simply the vehicle for the other. We're so distracted that when we give ourselves to so many things. Did you know that in the 60s, futurists and political scientists really expected that we would, by the time we hit 1985, they believed technology would advance so far, and they undershot. Okay, they had no idea how advanced we would become. They thought that the average Canadian American would be working 22 hours a week and only 26 or 27 weeks a year. Okay. They
My
believe that
dad told me that, and he said that people would sit around at cocktail parties and dinner parties and talk about what they were planning to do with all their free time.
right.
It's absurd to me, but it's real.
And what they didn't factor in, I mean, the technology has advanced what they expected it would do, but what they didn't factor in is that so much of our human identity, so much of our identity is derived from three basic things in this culture. It's derived from our accomplishments, what we do, and technology just gave us the ability to do more.
Mm-hmm.
It's we define ourselves by what we accomplish, what we do, and those are our trophies. Those are the things that we put out for people when we want them to like us, when we want them to think we're important. The second thing we do is we define ourselves by our acquisitions, by what we have, and the technology just gave us permission to access to more. And then the third one is, and this is very powerful, we define ourselves by what people say about us. All right. And there you have social media and people obsessed with the tiny dopamine hit they get from the like that shows up on their posting. And so those three things are operating inside of us all the time, right? And what they didn't understand in the 60s and 70s is that human beings would take this technology that we're using right now and would try to feed their desperate need for worth and value and importance and they just, and it seems like human beings have this infinite capacity to be needy, to want more. I need more affirmation. I need more likes. I need more people to, and so that begins to lead us down a road where we're busy. We're busy. We can make more money. We can accomplish more in the day. And so we try to, and without any self-regulation, we just become a hamster on a treadmill or on a wheel that just doesn't stop, and it goes crazy, right? And so, and it's interesting. Work has just has found its way into our social status. Jody, you and I were talking about this yesterday, and how 100 years ago, if you were wealthy, you didn't have to work so much. And so those who didn't have to work were considered to be wealthy. Whereas you have today, those who are wealthy are often depicted driving their Maserati with their Rolex, to a board meeting where they'll govern, important meetings with important people, right?
Yeah,
and so
I think you used the example of an advertisement in a magazine or something in the 70s. The visual depiction of someone who's successful is relaxing by their pool, right?
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And today it's a profession. Yeah. It's a professional, going to lead their corporation, right?
And building, so building more, bigger, better.
Right.
Getting, right. Control, the whole thing.
So there's this cultural pathological busyness and distraction and restlessness. Those are the three. And I promise you, those three things will take a toll on your emotional life. They will take a toll on your spiritual life. They will take a toll. And when I use this word, it's just the center of who you are. They will take a toll on your soul. They will wear you out. It's funny because there was a time, even 150 years ago, where we functioned according to agrarian rhythms. I was reading how before Edison invented the light bulb, people slept 11 hours a night.
That's
11
a dream
hours
to me.
Right?
Yeah.
11 hours a night, right? But then we created the light bulb, and now people didn't have to listen to their bodies. They could turn the light on. and they could stay up and visit or do whatever they wanted to do. I'll tell you another invention that I personally, I'll just throw this in. This might be a bit of a rabbit trail. I think there are two inventions that cause us more psychological, emotional stress than any two inventions, and that is the clock and the mirror. Is there anybody out there who loves their mirror? I hate the morning mirror. Oh, I put a dimmer switch in the bathroom just to avoid the morning mirror because I don't like who I see in there, right?
I just don't put on my glasses and then it's fine.
Then it's not bad. Yeah, that's a good call, actually. But those two things, we're obsessed with both of them. Can you walk by a window without checking yourself out? Can you walk by a mirror without checking yourself? No. And the more insecure you are, the more mirrors you look for to somehow feel better about yourself, but you end up feeling worse about yourself. But that's a side note. But think about the clock. The clock took us from an agrarian rhythm to now a mechanical device is telling us when to wake up and when to go to sleep. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden we are now not living in big swaths of time, like from the time the sun's up till noon, and then when the sun is in the center, then till evening, and then till the next day. Those are big, beautiful swaths of time in which you can do your work and all of that. But now you just think about it. Think about it as a lawyer.
I was just thinking about that because that's my previous profession, and we had to bill by the 6 or 7 minute segments, and we had to be able to capture, in case we were ever questioned about our value, we'd have to be able to describe what we did during that 6 or 7 minutes all day. It's crazy.
And yeah, like that's got to take a toll. Science tells us, psychology tells us that people that are dialed into their phones constantly. Did you know you touch your cell phone 2,600 and some times a day?
It's hard to wrap your head around that.
Right? Just pay attention to how often you touch your phone. And a culture that is dialed into their phone is in this continual state of artificial state of crisis, because they're being judged every time they pick up their phone by who texts them, who tweets them, who likes their tweet, their text, their post. It goes on constantly. And so we're always in this fight or flight mode. That's just the phone, Jody. That's just the phone, okay?
So can I stop you there for a sec? Because what I'm thinking about when you're talking about the phone is, you talked earlier about distraction.
Right.
And how that plays into all this hurry too, because part of the problem is, instead of when you do have that 2-minute breathing space or that car ride, or you're waiting in a waiting room, we're not using it to decompress or center or process what's going on. We're grabbing our phone, and I'm guilty of it, and I hate it. I'm even aware of it. It's almost like an addiction. You want to grab your phone and start doing that to yourself, even if it is negative. Right?
Absolutely. And there's a lot of research that goes on to tell us that this perpetual state of partial inattention, which is what that is, mm-hmm. it totally depletes your creativity, your productivity, your joy, your relationships. It affects everything. Think about how much talking you could do to your kids or your spouse, but instead, no, all of us are buried. We've had family, like Christmas, Easter, we've had the whole family over here, and literally at 1 or 2 times, we're all in the room, but we're all on a device in our own world. What is wrong with that picture? And I've caught it more than once.
So we take the kids away every summer for 2 weeks to a place that has no connectivity. Mm-hmm. And I see them detoxing for 2 or 3 days. Everybody's agitated. They don't know what to do with themselves. They eventually move through it, and it's beautiful. And we have this connection, like, it's such a unique thing that you don't get on day-to-day life. So it's distressing not relying on that all the time.
Right. You touch something 2,600 times or more a day and then take it away.
Yeah.
You don't even know what to do with your hands. Never mind your mind. Did you know that 80% of our national health care costs come down to 2 issues? One is obesity. Mm-hmm. That for Canadians, that's about $5 to $7 billion. But depression, that's $50 billion a year. Depression. And as you when you introduced me, you introduced that I work with university students. So together with a team of amazing interns, we did about 2,000 hours of counseling, a little over 2,000 hours in the last 2 semesters at the university, and off the charts by far. The number one thing kids come in because now their restlessness has gone to a new level. It's gone to anxiety, and it's gone, and then it goes to panic, and then it goes to depression, and depression and anxiety, they're just 2 sides of the same coin. And it's like we took away our kids' ability to be still, or even understand that as a concept, right? And so they use their phones to distract them. Well, they have all these other pressures going on, but whenever they scratch that itch, it just gets itchier.
Yes. So back to hurry. We were on talking about how some inventions change the way we live. What
Absolutely.
else? And how we build our own self-worth and self-esteem is tied into busyness and what we achieve every day. What else do you have to say about that?
Let's talk about people pleasing.
Okay.
That's a really good one, because I'm a people pleaser, and I have had to fight this my whole life. And the reason I'm a people pleaser is because I actually don't think I have enough worth. I don't think that I bring enough to the table, that unless I am making you happy, then I don't feel good enough about myself. And unless I'm making you happy, you'll walk away from me. You'll reject me. Okay. Right. And so I people please, which means that if you ask me for an appointment, even if I don't have time, I need that dopamine hit. I need that like, and so I'll make the appointment, and I'll squeeze it in. And it's amazing how desperate we are for that affirmation, that approval, that being liked, that we say yes with such a, if you don't learn to say no with a good heart, you'll always be saying no with a bad heart. You'll always be saying no and with a resentfulness inside of you, right? And so that contributes to our hurry, this desperate need to make everybody happy. Right.
And is that new and different? Is that a modern phenomenon as well?
I'm going to guess no. I'm going to guess that human beings have frail egos. I'm going to guess that we've had frail egos and frail a sense of self for a long time. I don't know that that's a new thing, but I will say that the device is that by virtue of the fact that you can look at yourself or you have to compare yourself to perfectly, airbrushed pictures.
Everything. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I even think of television. Because we're at home now, we've been watching these Hallmark shows. Holy moly.
Oh no.
And
don't do that.
Yeah, no, it's been quite something. It's I get teary even when the credit roll starts, at the beginning, I'm preparing myself for an emotional journey, but I look at it's so predictable. You look at the protagonist, the antagonist, you look at all of them, but they're all beautiful. They're all prettier than anybody, and then and we then subtly compare ourselves. This thing of comparison, it is soul sucking. It is absolutely soul sucking.
I noticed it in my teens a lot, right? And I know it's not just girls, it's boys too, but it is a bigger issue with girls for sure.
Yep.
I mean, think about back to your example, 100 years ago when we grew up in smaller towns, you didn't see those people, maybe your entire life. I mean, right? And that wasn't a factor, I don't think, for very many people. And
sure, in an agrarian, like 150 years ago, 80% of our population lived on farms. We were agrarian. And so the community would come together a few times a year, but other than that, what do you care what the neighbor looks like in his coveralls? You got coveralls too, you know? I mean, that's simple. We're simplifying something, but you can see how then you squeeze us together into these concrete, you know, what do we call them? Well, our cities and
Concrete jungle?
I was going to say concrete silos, and now we're stuck together, and we're trying to figure out, you know, who's the best, and that just gets really exhausting. There's been it's funny because among some of my friends who are like 10 years younger, I'm 60, so are 45, 50, they're becoming the social media sober. And they're so proud of themselves, you know. They have not been on social media for 3 weeks, and they feel like they've gotten their lives back. And
I took
things
almost
like
a
that.
year off before I started this position I'm in now. Felt like I needed to get reconnected for my job. Right. So it's a hard thing to do for a lot of people who have businesses or have a career that requires them to stay connected to people. But that year of sobriety from social media was a profound experience for me, because I had a detox period where I was constantly feeling that being pulled to it and stopping myself, right? But then after you get used to it, you realize you start waking up and noticing more things around you, anything from wildlife to hobbies to connecting with friends in a different way. It's a pretty powerful experiment for anybody to try.
You know what's interesting is that when you breathe your soul, when you can walk around in yourself and be okay. Carl Jung talked about this living in the shadow, which what he was talking about there. He said that, can you hold your brokenness and your beauty authentically? So there's just some things that we're terrible at. There's just some things that I'm not good at. There are things that I've failed at. There are things that there are some flaws in my character. There are things that I don't really like about myself, and but there are other things in my life that are really beautiful. Really, I don't know. They just work really well, right? It's interesting how for most of my life I've been healthier and more able to look at my brokenness and go, wow, I suck at that, and man, boy, yeah, shouldn't have done that, and wow. And I can talk about that, and I think that's vulnerability. But it's only been in the last 10 years that I've been able to actually claim my own beauty. That's harder because we have this inner critic that seems to direct us to our brokenness and point that out. But to be able to celebrate, you know, the things that the things that make me beautiful, right? And once you learn to claim those two things and walk around, but that is a process. That's a slow journey that you need to do with people you really, really trust, and who will let you be broken and let you be beautiful and love you the same, whether you're one or the other. Right?
And that's the value of therapy and why it's so important to support people. I know that it's been transformative for me personally working with someone like that. Yeah. And this is why it's important, the work we're doing with students and other people in our community. You often need help to get there. It's not something you just know intuitively how to do or that you can do alone.
Right. Oh, you can't do it alone. But I will say that, you know what, the whole idea of a psychotherapist or a psychologist is kind of a new idea. Before we had tribes and we had elders and we had beautiful people in our lives that could be patient with us because they're just a little further ahead on the journey than we are, right? And so I think that if you have really healthy people in your lives, where there's lots of honesty and authenticity and grace, then I think that you can grow really, really well with that. And so what I would call somebody that is quite healthy internally, I would say their soul prospers. You know, they have a prosperous soul. A prosperous soul emanates healing. It emanates life. It's a very safe place for other broken people. And a prosperous soul never, ever ends with the person themselves. It always ends in leaving others better. It always transforms into you know, making a difference for others, caring for others, loving others. I think that that's an important thing. And again, I think that in terms of slowing down,
Yeah.
I think that I told Jody, I told you the story about during the height of British colonialism, an Englishman went to Africa to with the intent to do a trek through some of the jungles, and so he hired some tribesmen as local porters, just to carry his stuff. And they journeyed, I think, 1 or 2 days, and the pace was intense, and the terrain was steep, and it was very difficult. And he got up the third day to go and hit the road again, hit the path, you know, and his porters, the tribesmen, refused to move. And when he asked the interpreter what was wrong, he said, they're waiting for their souls to catch up to their bodies. They're waiting for their souls to catch up to their bodies. You see, I love that phrase. I read it, and it just blew me, because at the time that I was reading it, my soul was about 3 weeks behind my body.
Right.
You know, and I was actually anxious. I was twitching. I was, you know, over everything, overeating, over drinking, over everything. And that distractedness, that sense of, what's the word? Restlessness.
Yeah.
It was in everything that I was doing. And talk about being present, inability to be present in the moment. That was me. Mm-hmm. And you know that your soul hasn't caught up with your body when you cannot be still, when you cannot be present. And I think that practicing stillness, practicing mindfulness, practicing a meditation,
yes,
every day, finding one quiet moment, and if you can only do it for 10 minutes, then do it for 10 minutes. But finding a place in your day where you can turn all the apps off in your head and just rest in the day and rest in the moment and breathe. And just accept the moment for what it is. No judgment. This moment is what it is. There's some good things going on in my life, and there's some bad things going on in my life. It is what it is. And find a way to love yourself.
And that gives you a moment to try to let your soul catch up.
Right.
And you can feel it, right? When you sit,
Yeah.
when you meditate or sit quietly in your backyard and you listen to the birds and you smell the air, something happens to your body, right? You get that calming feeling, and your brain kind of empties out. And that's the feeling maybe that story was referring to.
I think so. I think what it means is you've stopped moving from fear of flight or fight, and you just are in that moment. I don't know if you're like me, but when texts come in, I still have this tiny little, I'm not sure what it is, but I'm back in the game.
It's like a jolt for me.
That's right. Yeah,
it
that's
triggers
exactly
me.
Yeah, for sure.
Every time I hear that little ding noise.
Right. And so when you're trying to be quiet and trying to stay present in the moment and just in this moment, make sure your phone's in another house. You know, make sure your phone is nowhere you can hear it, or you're tempted. And this is another thing. I would just, maybe some of your listeners, I challenge you to put your phone down more and go for a walk without it. Try not to touch it so much. And if you just pay attention to your relationship to the thing. And if you can't go to bed without it, then it's an unhealthy relationship. If you can't, go for a walk without it, if you have to take it everywhere, then it's not about just being accessible. There's a relationship to this thing. And you know what? You don't actually own your phone owns you. Because marketing people know that if they can have your attention, they can get your money.
Yeah.
And we think we own this tech, though. We don't. Are you kidding? Every time you go into social media, somebody's got your attention.
Trying to sell you something.
Yeah, and they don't want your attention to tell you you're a good person. They want your money, right?
They want to tell you you're missing something. There's something wrong with you, or
There's something,
you're
yes,
missing something that they can give you and sell you. Yeah.
right. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I like that language you said, that you have a toxic relationship with your phone. It's like any other toxic relationship. That's going to stick with me. I like that. So what do you do with, you're an expert in young adults and young people. I live with two 17-year-old boys. The second they wake up, they're on their phone. I nag them 1,000 times a day. Doesn't work. They're cooking omelets on the stove, and they're watching videos while they do it. No matter what they're doing, they're attached to their phone.
Yeah.
What do we do? How do you work with kids? What do you say?
You know something, at some point in time, they're going to have to figure this one out on their own, because you're their mom. And the more you say don't, the more they're going to do it, just because you're their mom.
Right.
You know, at some point in time, a peer's going to go, you know, dude, put the thing down. You're being rude. You know, at some point in time, that thing is not helping them, as you know.
That's it. Yeah.
Did you know that in the turn, like in 2000, they discovered that most of us in North America, our attention span is 12 seconds. Today it's 8 seconds. 8 seconds. That's our attention span. And you know why it's 8 seconds is because we can watch our phones and make an omelet at the same time. Did you know that a goldfish's attention span is 9 seconds? We lost to the goldfish at this point. What will it be? What will it be in 5 years from now or 10 years from now? We'll be the most distracted human beings on the planet.
And tying this back to mental health, you and I have spoken about this. My concern is that this constant state of distraction and hurry is also a huge barrier to happiness, of course, but to wisdom. You know, you and I have talked a lot about this. Young people today, the population you work with at the university, for example, and how they're ill-equipped in certain life skills for
Right.
a lot of reasons. But they also maybe are missing out on some really important opportunities to grow wisdom and to learn, you know, the self-identity stuff. How do you figure out who you are and where you fit and what you want to be and where you want to go if you never have time in your life to reflect on the decisions you've made and the impact they've had? And right, that's, you can speak to all this. You're going to do it more eloquently than I am.
I think that what's happened is that we, for our kids, we talked about this, that I'm 60 and I went through adolescence, and it took me, and I was slow to mature, but it took me like 6 years. Okay.
Which is typically high school back in the 70s.
Right. Yeah. It's a grade 8 but we were getting married at 20 years old. Mm-hmm. And there's a term we use, it's called self-actualization. It means that you know enough about yourself and you know how to make critical decisions to look after a family, to be able to support yourself and to support your loved ones, right? And so by the time we were 20, we were either, you know, well on our way through a degree, or we were working, you know, and making money. Everything, and that wasn't a glorified, mine is not a glorified generation, trust me, but that was our reality. Today, kids enter into puberty sooner because they cook omelets and watch stuff on their phones. And they're actually self-actuating around 26, 27, and some would even say around the age of 30 is when they're able to make decisions. And one of the reasons is that their brains are different than our brains. Is the helicopter parent, is the fact that they were handed from one adult to another, to another, to another, to another, you know, whether it's a coach or you know, somebody, you know, your karate coach or a soccer coach or a teacher or Sunday school teacher or youth group, youth pastor, whatever their experience was. And they never had to make a decision. All the decisions were pre-chewed and handed to them. But doesn't the phone do exactly the same thing for us? You want entertainment? Watch something funny. You want more entertainment? Watch another one. Watch YouTube. YouTube yourself for 20 years and see what it does to your brain. Your creativity goes down the toilet. It's only when we stop and we actually begin to let our brains um, function, make decisions, fall, make bad decisions, experience the consequences of it, get fired, fail a few times, and then figure out how not to do that some more because it hurts. Then we that's how they'll mature. No different than we were growing up, but we don't give them any opportunity to fail.
I think
They
part of
can't
the
even.
reason for that too, it's there's lots of reasons. One of the reasons is back to this hurry thing. Families are in a hurry all the time. Usually both parents are working. The kids are overscheduled with a million activities, trying to be the Uber type A families that a lot of people
Right.
are. And so it's easier, I think, for parents to do things for their kids than to let them figure it out. Like we talked about it yesterday, getting ready for this show, that back when I was a kid, it was like, get out of the house and don't come back till dinner. And you learn a lot of stuff when you're out hanging out with,
Sure.
making decisions and making mistakes, right?
And I think that I thought it's interesting that it's a special thing when we put our phones down for a day as a family, to be a family, right? And maybe and then talk about multi-generational families. Like, how foreign is that for our kids to be around, my grandkids to be around me for extended periods of time, whereas again, my parents were immigrants. They came from Germany, and we were a people that we survived together as immigrants in Calgary, with all these other families and grandparents and uncles and aunts and all of that. And so we had lots of opportunity to meet everybody in the tribe on a regular basis, right? So all of this is to say, I think that self-regulation with technology, self-regulation with your schedule, would it kill you to have a break in the day? Would it really be that bad if you didn't fill every hour of your workday? And I think that we need to find a way to create margin in our day, where you actually just schedule in a half hour between appointments, and they're useless half hours. It's a but we were threatened by useless thoughts, wasted time, useless moments, and yet those are things that we have to find a way to. Those are actually breathing moments that you breathe with your very, again, I use the term soul, but your inner person can just stop and breathe, and then you're ready for your next assignment or next thing you're doing.
So I'm programmed like this. You know that about me. So I think it's bigger than just a fear of lack of productivity and efficiency, taking those breaks. I think when people take a break and they're not stimulated and they're not on their phone and they have this space, because it's so foreign to so many people, it makes a lot of people feel anxious, right? Because what bubbles up all the stuff that you're trying to distract yourself from. So all of a sudden you're worried about your long list of things that you haven't taken the time to process and sort out and make sense of, right?
Absolutely. If you don't take regular times of asylum, so I'm talking about these quiet times in the morning where you face your fear, where you face your regret, where you face your guilt, where you do something with it. You don't just bury it, keep sticking it down, right? Where you allow it to surface and you look at it and you learn from it. And you still love yourself because there's still a beautiful side of you, even though there's a broken side of you. You don't do that on a regular basis. I know this. Your body will demand an extended time of asylum. I pushed it.
Be more frank about that, because I think I know what you're saying. Your body's going to make you sick, so you stop.
Yeah, like
right?
I've had 2 bouts of clinical depression,
Mm-hmm.
and both of those were 3-year windows that I was functioning, but I was fully anxious all the time, almost impossible to sleep. And the reason that I got to those states, I was emotionally exhausted, is because for about a year and a half prior to that, I pushed myself so hard. And I just didn't honor my body. I didn't honor my rhythms. I just pushed and pushed and pushed. And all of a sudden I could feel, you know, when you've outrun your soul for a year and a half, something's going to give.
I've had this similar experience. I know exactly how it feels, and I've suffered from depression as well. So I get what you're saying, and I think it has a lot to do with burnout, which is part of the hurry culture.
Right.
And it's stuffing all those feelings you just named, the guilt, the shame, the regret, and never dealing with it, and it just builds up. And
then that's why, if you've got a good therapist or a really good kind of a mentor in your life, that's where you process that stuff, right? Yeah. That's where you bring it out and stop long enough to go, okay, what do I do with all of this, right? And so my encouragement to be is that, but you got to go there regularly. Like I gotta have a quiet place probably 5 times a week. For me, it's an hour, and I actually process it intentionally. And I have my own way. We could talk about, there's so many ways to do that. But
you know what? Let's end today, because we're going to have you back many times on this show. Let's talk a little bit about some practical ideas that we can share about what that might look like for people to practice slowing down and to explore what happens when they take that time out of their day to do that.
So look at your phone, not now, because that would be too.
I'm looking at it right now, actually.
That's too, yeah, so am I, actually. But you know, if you have a lot of apps open in your phone, your battery will die before the day does, right? Yes. A lot of us carry worry and, you know, fear. We carry stuff in our brains. We carry it around. It's like an app that's turned on.
Always running in the background.
Always running in the background. And it's so familiar to us that we don't even realize that we can turn it off. But you can turn it off. You just have to be intentional about that. And so in the mornings when I'm sitting, I've become very aware of what's going on in my head. And a lot of times, if it's I'm worried about a meeting I'm going to have, I'm worried about disappointing somebody, I'm mad at myself, I feel regret for something I said. I literally, I have to get it out of my head. And the way I get it out of my head is I write it down. And if I have any power to do something about that thing, then it becomes a calendar item. I'm going to take care of that at 11 o'clock today. If I don't have power to do anything about it, and I'm worried about what somebody thinks about me, I just give myself permission to let it go. And I'll circle that and go, I don't have any, but I'm not going to give my energy to it. I don't have power to change. I can't control what that person thinks about me, but I'm just letting that go.
So I'm going to jump in there just for a second. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
That's not necessarily an easy thing to do. And no. That's something that takes practice. Any of the stuff we're talking about now takes practice and commitment and dedication, because it's not going to be easy the first time you do it. It might not be easy the first 10 times you do it, but the more you do it, the easier it is, even though you'll have good and bad days. That's why people call these things practices, right? I just want to accentuate that, because a lot of people that I speak to day to day say, well, that doesn't work for me, or I have poor attention span, or I'm too, well, you know, I'm the most, I have a very short attention span. I'm a hyper person. I'm a driven, fast thinking, motivated person. So are you. You and I are like the poster child for this, because we're both like this, right? So if we can do it, anybody can do it. That's what I'm trying to stress here, right?
And I mean, I have my favorite authors, my contemplation authors. I have my favorite people who lead me, okay? But I will say that even they will say, and they've been doing this longer than I have, it is the hardest muscle to develop, because we are naturally scattered. We're naturally running. And so, but that's why it's so important, because it's hard to do. Yeah. And if I fail at it, and I was telling Jody yesterday that jogging for me is that often a really good place to do that. Yeah. Because I live in kind of in a semi-rural area. and I can run and not see another human being. And I run through orchards and vineyards. That's where I live.
Beautiful.
And I can just be quiet. I can't really think much because I'm trying to stay alive. I'm a Clydesdale, and so I don't run. I don't run naturally, but I love running, and so I can get really quiet and feel wonderful, refreshed by the end of that. And so whatever it takes to get quiet, find a way to get quiet. And I will say this: a real practical thing is you can't think about nothing. And so the point is you have to focus what you're thinking about. And if you have some poetry, if you have something, if you have a scripture that you like, if you have something that's sacred to you, that you really, it can't be a big paragraph. It's a phrase, it's a sentence, it's something small. Focus on that and try to hold that for 5 minutes. Just
That's
that one thought.
Yeah.
And then, and I promise your brain's going to want to run about 500 rabbit trails, and you just keep bringing it back, and you go, no, we're just 5 minutes. That's all. 5 minutes, and 5 minutes will feel like a long time for the first few times, and then if you can hold it for 10, then that is 5 minutes is like an hour of rest if you can shut your brain down.
So we've talked about exercise, and you repeated a little bit what you said yesterday. You were saying that you're so concentrating on breathing and staying alive that your brain can't do anything else. I love that. I like being out and getting my body busy to create silence up here too. I think a lot of people need that. You talked about journaling. I cut you short there a little bit. We could talk a little bit more about that maybe. We also have a speaker coming up in a few weeks that's going to bring us through a journaling session to show people the power of that. You started saying that you get it out, and then you go through the things that you can control or that you can't control. Did you want to finish that?
Sure. Because there are some things that you have power over and some things you don't have power over, right? But all of this is bouncing around in your head, right? And so the reason I'll write it down, and I will even talk out loud quite a bit when I'm by myself, because I'm a verbal processor. I usually cannot wait to hear what I'm going to say, because that's how I know what I'm thinking, right? And the same thing is when I'm trying to shut apps off, I will actually be having this conversation. Why does that bug me so much? Oh, I can't control what that person thinks about me, so I'm just letting that go. And I will say it out loud, because what it does is that whatever's going on in here has to come out so that you can shut it off. And so that's why I've got a couple of different ways. I write it down, I calendar item it, or I talk out loud and I process it that way. And then I always finish my quiet time with gratitude, always. And that is like a soul washing. Again, you can tell I have a kind of a spiritual background, because I love that word soul. But it's like washing your soul out. To gratefulness is such a beautiful way for me, and to move into my day. It resets me in a really cool way.
Because hurry and busyness is like, it steamrolls your spirit or your soul. It really does. There's no space for it or room for it, right?
Right. It's like at some level, emotionally, you're holding your breath all day just to get the work done.
Yeah.
Because you when you're a human doing, you don't need a soul. You know, when I was talking about those tribesmen who said that they're waiting for their souls to catch up to their bodies, how much of what we do, because we outpace our internal rhythm, is soulless and mechanical. If we're living by the clock, and if we're operating by all these schedules that are imposed on us, I know the difference between operating soullessly and operating really full and whole, and the difference, it's so obvious to anybody who's around me. You can tell when I'm just distracted mess and when I'm really present. And if you can't be present with yourself, Jody, how in the world can you actually be present with somebody else? And so we lie to ourselves and we think that we're doing a great job, when the truth of the matter is we're a mess. We're a hot mess inside, until we slow it down. Get in touch with ourselves, You know, deal with the stuff. Go ahead.
What was that quote you said yesterday about that we're human doings?
Yeah, we've become human doings, not human beings, because we don't know how to be. We don't know how to be, but we're sure good at doing. And then we retire, and then we die because we don't know how to be. We're just so good at doing, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Ed, for all of this. Lots of food for thought, lots of practical ideas of how to practice slowing down during our day, because really I hear you saying that it's just up to us to start practicing creating little windows of downtime in our day, and that's one of the best ways we can fight this hurry culture.
Right. And this is a great time to do it. If ever we were given the opportunity to lean into something, it is now.
Because we have this opportunity to press the reset button.
Right.
And we've got some time on our hands. Some of us have time on our hands.
Right.
Yeah. And maybe that's a positive silver lining that can come out of a lot of the bad that's happening right now, is slowing down a bit.
Yep.
And choosing not to go back to it when we're allowed to.
Right. Yeah. Choosing a different pace when we get through this thing.
Mm-hmm.
See, one of the things I wonder about, you know, whether we're in this place for 4 months or 2 months or God forbid 18 months, I wonder. I always ask myself, will we have learned anything from it, or have we just been finding new ways to distract ourselves, and we'll continue to do that, and then till we get back to our old ways of distraction?
That's my concern too. Yeah.
This is such a wonderful opportunity to discover something new, a new rhythm, a new way of being, and maybe we'll even really like it so much that when we can go back, we'll have a hybrid rather than going right back to our pathological busyness.
Mm-hmm. Let's hope. Thank you, Ed. Thanks for spending time with us today.
Thanks, Jody.
We'll see you again.
Okay, you got it. Bye.
Thanks for watching, everybody. This is Third Space Live. Stay connected on Facebook, Instagram, thirdspacecanada.org, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.